Peter Brower here. Today I want to talk about what it really costs to buy a house. So I'm going to talk a little bit about percentages and exactly what you should expect in the buying process. So the first thing that we look at is your down payment, and your typical down payment is a minimum of 5%. Now, most people buying a house, that is what they're going to put down. Now, that 5% is applied to the purchase price, but there is a caveat to it because you have to buy mortgage insurance. So if you buy mortgage insurance, because you absolutely have to by law, and that insurance, by the way, is there that in the case that you default on your loan, quite frankly, the bank is protected. You're not protected, but it is something that you're going to actually pay 4% for on that 5% that you're paying down on the property. So in essence, you're only putting 1% down on the purchase price when you put 5% down when you're buying a house. Really important to know, this is a sliding scale. So the higher the percentage that you put down, the lower that this premium is. And at 20%, that changes over and it becomes a conventional mortgage. And then you do not have this premium at all. D-transfer tax in HRM is 1.5%. Now you might ask what that is. Well, that the city basically takes this money, puts it in their coffers, and they use it to operate, quite frankly, the city. You do not get any actual value out of this. Lawyer costs. Lawyer costs should be somewhere between $1,200 and $1,500. That's a safe assumption. For that, they're going to register the deed, they're going to deal with the other lawyers, they're going to review the documents. One misnomer that people have is that the minute that they call their lawyer, the clock starts running. Not for real estate lawyers. They have a flat fee process. So that's why we send the agreements over to them for them to review, to ensure that they are properly written. Moving costs. Now this can be as high or as low as you want to be, because you can of course rent the U-Haul truck. The U-Haul truck is probably more in the $500 range. On the higher side of it, it's more in the $5,000 range. When I say $5,000, I mean you're hiring a mover, you're moving from one part of the country to another, and you're having a full 18-wheelers. This is based on weight and time. Okay, so you're going to want to get quotes on this, so there's lots of variety on that. Fuel oil adjustment. When you move into your new home, if it has oil or natural gas, or it has propane, specifically propane and oil, you are actually going to get a full tank on that closing date. But you're going to pay for that full tank because you don't want to be running out in the middle of the winter and not have heat in your house. That can be anywhere these days between $800 and $1,200. If you have a propane tank, you are also going to have an ongoing cost because you rent those. You cannot own those. Not particularly expensive, about $150 a year for that. Inspections. Well, your typical inspection is going to run about $650. That's for a general inspection. That's a guy who comes, shows up with a truck, moisture meter, measurements, hopefully he goes up on the roof, then goes in at the basement, looks around the house, does a top to bottom general inspection. That's the number. But you often have additional inspectors. You may have to have a sewage inspection. You might have to have water tests. Something may come from the inspection that you're going to spend additional funds. I'm going to say that this range is between $650 and $1,500 on the higher side. Deposit. The deposit is what you apply to the purchase price. So you need cash on hand. That deposit is applied to the down payment. So it is subtracted from what you owe on closing date. So, but typically your lowest that we see really is $1,000, but we more commonly see in the $5,000 all the way up to $100,000, depending on the type of property that you're buying. Survey or title insurance. These are two different products. They do in some ways the same thing, but not quite. The survey basically is a meets and bounds description of the property. And from that, you're going to know whether your property is cited properly, if there's any encumbrance on other properties, or if other properties are encumbering on yours. This these days can cost about $2,000. This is the best way to truly know what you're buying. The other version is title insurance, and it's much less expensive. I'm going to say it's somewhere in the $700 range. And basically what that is, if something goes wrong, title insurance will step in and they'll make it right. I prefer the more expensive, less complicated solution, solve the problem before the problem shows itself. An appraisal. So you're going to have bank fees. They're going to hide that stuff into a lot of stuff, but an appraisal is somewhere in the $400 to $500 range. An estoppel certificate, if you are buying a condo, usually that's paid by the seller, but sometimes people want two, one early in the process, one in the back end of the process. That can be up to $400 depending on what the condo court charges. And then you're going to have tax adjustments for municipal taxes. If the seller has prepaid taxes, you're going to have that adjustment. But the lawyer will determine that, and that can, again, depending on the property, be anywhere from $1 to probably, to about $3,000, depending again on the size of the property. This gives you a very good overview when you are looking to buy a property. So this all looks pretty complicated, but this is actually a general rule of thumb which is going to solve all of the stuff I just talked about. You need 5% down, and then you need about 3.5% to cover all of the other stuff. And that's when you can buy a place. So if you have between 8.5% and 10% saved overall to buy the dream house that you're looking to buy, you're ready to go as long as the bank says you can buy and you can borrow the money. Now we know what it takes to get into a home. Now, if you're interested in having a detailed discussion, we are here to help, so reach out to us. But there's one more thing to know, and that's in the next video. What's it going to cost to operate your home? Because we need to make sure that you can afford that as well. I want to create the best experience for my client in Canada, quite frankly.